So I flew up last night on a plane, right? And on the plane, I was thinking about what I might say today and thinking about what I might say to introduce this session on managing stress through life. And there was a baby 2 seats away from me just crying and crying. And I was a bit stuck about what I was going to say to introduce this session. The baby kept crying and crying some more, and I was thinking the conference is on tomorrow, and it was getting to be quite late at night, and I couldn't think of anything because the baby was crying. The stewardess said, "Excuse me, would you like a glass of?" And I said, "Yes, white, please, maybe 2, or maybe in a mug. Do you have any big mugs to put wine in? That would be good." And that's one way we manage stress, isn't it? Have a big drink. It's possibly not the best way. There are other ways, probably better ways to manage stress, and we're going to find out what some of them are now from Professor Paula Barrett from the School of Education at the University of Queensland. She's also Director of the Pathways Health and Research Centre. She's an internationally recognised and preeminent scholar and groundbreaking researcher in child psychology and education. She's done a lot of work on anxiety disorders in children and on anxiety treatment programs. Please welcome Professor Paula Barrett.
Thank you for having me here. I'm actually from Brisbane, and so it's a great pleasure to speak in my own city. I love living here. I've lived here since '86. Can I please have those lights a bit down? Because I can't see anything. I'm kind of blind with those lights on my face. Okay, thank you. I've got 20 minutes, which is a really big challenge. So please ask me any questions at the end. Right at the end, I'm actually doing with Tim Sharp a launch of our new resilience program, which is everything I've done for the last 2 years, write an adult resilience program for parents and teachers and all adults. So please come and ask me any questions because I'm going to go pretty fast. Okay, so I thought I'd use a title, Building Resilience, rather than dealing with stress. So it's turning it around into a positive framework. So if you're resilient, you're going to deal with stress pretty well, most of the time. So, where is my thing? Okay, thank you. I always start my speeches by acknowledging my family and all the animals that I have, that I love, the rescued animals, and also the people around the world that do our resilience programs to prevent stress and anxiety in children in school communities. And also the Pathways team. There's some of my staff here helping, so I'm very grateful for the great team that I've got. So I thought this actually has been on my PowerPoints before this conference. I always have this in my PowerPoint. So one of the things that we'd like to be is most of the time feeling or creating or trying to be happy. Obviously not all the time, it's impossible, but most of the time trying to experience happiness and peace in our lives. And particularly my area, which is children and adolescents, is creating, if we see our children happy most of the time, we are happy ourselves. Okay, and resilience is the ability to bounce in the face of adversity. So all of us have got times where we have challenges. This year has been very challenging for me, this past year. And you just have to bounce back. Even if we plan ahead that things are going to be okay and we invest a lot, sometimes things don't go okay. So how do you bounce back in the face of adversity is a level of resilience. And the great thing is that we can always build that level of resilience. Okay, I thought I'd bring this up because when in sociology and psychology of happiness, when there's research done cross-culturally, we would expect countries like Australia, United States, and some of the rich countries in Europe would have the highest levels of happiness. However, that's not what we find. We actually find that countries in Latin America that are financially quite poor and in Africa are the countries that usually report the highest levels of happiness. And why would that be? And in my particular area, prevention of anxiety, depression, and youth suicide, it's very sad to know that Australia is one of the highest countries in terms of youth suicide between actually the ages of 12 and 35. So how are we going to prevent that from happening, and how are we going to build resilience in our young people? Okay, we also know from the World Health Organization statistics, and we've known that for about 5 years now, that in Western countries, the two big things in terms of health and in terms of building happiness, in terms of building resilience, we need physical health, mental health. The things that we're going to have to focus on, they're going to affect us the most, are obesity and type 2 diabetes. That's lifestyle diabetes due to your diet and lack of exercise. And the other one is anxiety and depression, which is becoming more and more prevalent in not just young people, but in adults as well. Okay. So we can summarize what I've just said, that we can always build the future for our children or for our families. Sometimes things like tsunamis, floods, and other personal or family disasters or difficulties such as ill health, chronic health, things that happen with our work life, etc., our personal relationships, how sometimes unpredictable things happen. But if we build people within themselves, children, parents, teachers, families, to be strong inside, they're going to be dealing with those events in a more resilient way, and they're going to, in that way, push away stress. Okay, I usually, anyone who's seen me speak, spend about 2 hours on this PowerPoint. Today I've got approximately 5 minutes. So if you'd like to know more about it, I can do it in another setting with more time. So if you want to explain emotional wellness and development of any human being that is sitting in this audience, if you place yourself between the risk factors that you can see there and the protective factors and an interaction between those risk and protective factors, that's how you explain how you are at the moment, what your level of resilience, your level of stress, your level of coping. Okay, so the first risk factor is really your level of sensitivity at birth, which doesn't change. I don't like the word personality because I don't like putting people in boxes, right? I believe everyone can change and we all on a continuum and we all can learn and change, and all the evidence now about brain plasticity and neuroplasticity is that we all have the ability to learn and change in a positive way. But the word temperament and the word sensitivity is not such a labeling word. Some of us, 1 in every 5 people, is born with a more sensitive temperament. That means you feel things more intensely, you react more intensely, and you're going to be more vulnerable. So it's a risk factor, but it doesn't mean you need to, for sure, experience more stress than other people, because we know that some people are born very sensitive, and that's 1 in 5. So approximately 20-25% of the population cross-culturally, independent of gender, independent of socioeconomic status, independent of life circumstances, 1 in 5 is born more sensitive. And that will not change throughout the lifespan, okay? So those people, it's more of a risk factor, how sensitive you are to things that surround you. And can be also a very good thing, because if you're more sensitive, you're going to learn faster. You're going to perceive things in a more intense way. So a lot of children and adults that are talented in music or art or sport or at a cognitive level, a lot of them fit into these 1 in 5 sensitivity levels. Okay. But throughout life, they can learn to be more resilient by learning skills that will make them strong, like a stress inoculation model, like getting a vaccine. Even though you're sensitive, you can cope well because you've got the skills that help you cope well. Okay, the neurological brain development, a lot of people have talked about that in this conference. We know that our brains, no matter if you're 99 years old or 5 years old, can continuously grow and form new synapses and new neurological connections. Obviously, older people, it forms slower. The change is slower. The forming of new connections is slower, but younger people is faster. But the issue is that even if you're an elderly person, if you do the right things, which is exercise, learning new things, having a positive outlook on life, your brain is continuously going to form new cells. That's a fantastic thing to know. Also, we know that during adolescence, they're more vulnerable in terms of any negative life experience because a lot of those cells are not formed yet, especially in the frontal lobe, which is the part of the brain that is responsible for regulating emotions, planning ahead, empathy, etc. Attention bias is a fantastic new area that we just have research data in the last 2 years. That's very different from thinking. Thinking is what we see on the other side as a protective factor, cognitive style. Attention is what you do before you start thinking, how you absorb, how you feel the world through your 5 senses. So what you choose to every second of your life to pay attention to with your eyes, with your ears, with your skin, with your sense of smell, with your sense of taste. And we can all make a choice to focus, to pay attention to positive things around us. That's really important. And we're just beginning to develop technology to teach people how to pay attention in effective ways to positive stimuli around them, which is different from thinking. It's before thinking. Okay, life events, traumas, it's another risk factor. And the most important thing for you to understand, it's not single incident traumas that are long-lasting in terms of a risk factor, but continuous. So living with chronic illness, children that live with siblings with cancer, it's very stressful. Living with chronic social, emotional, or any type of abuse, anything that you experience on a daily basis is a big risk factor. So it doesn't mean that you're going to be necessarily not resilient, but you need support and you need to learn skills to become a strong person. Okay, on the other side, the protective factors, all the positive things you can do. So first, attachment. Attachment is not just about mother and son. It's about important relationships throughout your lifetime. So everyone needs unconditional love from at least one other living creature throughout life. Even if you're 99, you're in a nursing home, and you've got dementia, you still feel things. You still need unconditional love from one living being, okay? And that can be ideally your parents or family members, but if you don't have that, can be other people, and if you don't have that, can be an animal, because there's a lot of case studies now of people can develop positive attachments through a relationship with an animal of any kind, or even nature. There's beginning to emerge some research where people form very strong relationships with trees or with a natural space that give them that sense of love, okay? So that's the most important protective factor. Cognitive style, whether you see the glass as half full more often than half empty. And that's something you can all learn independent where in the continuum you are. We've got very good technology to teach children age 4 onwards how to become positive thinkers. Family, I was in the room upstairs listening to one of the keynotes here about the interconnection between people. We all need support networks. If we've got family, fantastic, but we need community support networks. That doesn't mean you need a lot of people, but you need at least a handful of people or families that you're close to that are going to be there for you in good and bad times and support you and your children in your community. Okay. Sleep, diet, exercise, there's so much to say about that. Basically, we need more sleep because since the invention of the electric light, we're sleeping actually 2 or 3 hours less every day, and that was more than 100 years ago. But now it's the computer issue, the technology issue, where people are through the night either SMSing or looking at their laptops, and so sleep is when we charge our immune system. So if we don't have enough sleep, we're going to be vulnerable. Diet is the issue of reducing sugar. I'm very happy to see the food in this conference is healthy. Reducing sugar is about type 2 diabetes and reducing sugar in the diet and eating brown bread and not having soft drinks and all those sugar-loaded drinks and foods. Okay, exercise, you've heard about this. Yesterday I was sitting in some of the workshops that we need to basically move for an hour every day. Whether you walk your dog, you walk by yourself, you walk with friends, or you run, or you bike ride, or you swim, you need to exercise for an hour a day because that's going to stimulate blood flow in your system, the formation of endorphins, the natural chemicals that make you happy, and prevent anxiety and depression, and will oxygenate your brain so your brain develops more brain cells. So why wouldn't you want to exercise every day? You want to, of course, from today onwards. And evidence-based programs. So it doesn't matter if you can't park a car next to the shopping center. You can park very far away. In fact, you can just use one of your grandmothers pushing things and you walk to the shopping center or to a local market, even better, and buy your things and you walk. Okay, so then you do both aerobic exercise and muscle type of exercise, resistance training, because it'll be like pushing a weight up the road. Okay, So evidence-based programs, we've got very good technology in Australia, in particular in Brisbane. We've got our resilience prevention programs that have been acknowledged by the World Health Organization as being effective through research, national, international research, and we've got them for all age groups. So we know that's a very powerful prevention and a very powerful protective factor for children and families and adults to learn resilience skills. And you can learn these. It's not as if you've got it, you don't have it. You can learn them. I've got so much. Better hurry up. So these are the components of evidence-based. Evidence-based, that means they've been proved through research to work. You have to give people attachment skills on how to make their relationships stronger and more stable and more fulfilling in between adults and children, but adults themselves in the workforce, etc. Physiological skills, all the mindfulness and relaxation strategies and self-soothing strategies. Cognitive skills, changing thinking, but also changing attention style. And learning skills, how to problem solve, how to face difficulties, how to pick positive role models in your community, not just in the television, and how to form support networks and family relationships with people. So our evidence-based programs give skills to people. Doesn't matter what age you are at all those levels. Okay. So resilience models for the future will focus on not just on neuroplasticity, brain cognitive development, we are already beginning to know a little bit about that, but also on developing exercise routines for people and getting people to stick to them, changing diets, drinking water, eating brown bread and all varieties of brown things, everything, the secret is brown rather than white, etc. And the sleep, the importance of sleep in people's lives, but also learning social emotional skills at every stage in life. In the old days, it used to be called stress management programs. Now the technology has evolved so much, science has evolved so much. There's resilience, strong, effective programs to teach anyone how to be strong, how to cope with life, how to be happier. Okay, and also the family's community citizenship. I was hearing another keynote earlier in the day here in the room about how powerful it is if every one of you dedicated 1 hour a week to a charity, a community cause, whether it's helping children suffering from cancer, helping animals in an animal welfare league organization, helping elderly in a nursing home, your levels of happiness, resilience, levels of anxiety would reduce, levels of depression would reduce, everything good would increase, and everything negative would reduce. The research is showing that in people. Okay, now I have to show Michael Luning, a national hero in Australia. So the ability to change thinking, because everything I've been telling you is about changing thinking. It involves a lot of paradigm shifts. Your diet, your family relationships, your thinking, how you pay attention, how you exercise daily. It involves a lot of changes in your thinking and your paradigms, and how you're going to be able to do that. So there's a fantastic metaphor from Michael Luning, overlooking my life so far. In my life, I accumulated many things. So I decided it was time for a good cleanup. I put it all in a pile. It was very confusing. And I piled it up. It was just like a mountain, like a hill, just a hill. Then I stared at it and realized it was just a hill. You don't sort it out. You just stare at it because it's there. So I decided to climb it up because it was a good time to try to see beyond what I knew. So I climbed up my mountain of everything I had in my head, and the view was simply magnificent. And it's a fantastic metaphor for having the courage to change your paradigms, the way you look at things, and making effective, long-lasting changes in your life. And how do you do that? How to get there? You keep walking towards the gate, you keep walking towards the gate, and you keep walking towards the horizon. And you sit down every now and then, you have a rest, and then you just keep on with it, and you keep walking, that's how you get there. Another fantastic metaphor for perseverance, and that it's worthwhile, every single one of you, if you make one tiny little change in the areas that I mentioned before, you will make a huge difference, ripples of difference in every community you belong to. So it is worthwhile, every person trying. And these are some of the books that I recommend as references. They're all very recent, and they really challenge the way people think and moving on into a more positive way of life. Okay, thank you for listening to me.